On the edge of a quiet little village, where the wind hums softly through the flower fields at dusk, lived a boy named Oliver. Oliver loved adventures, but not the noisy kind with roaring dragons. He preferred tiny adventures, the quiet kind, where you follow a butterfly's path and listen to whispering rivers. Every evening before bed, Oliver would sit by his window and look out toward the tallest peak far beyond the village. Everyone knew it as the Sleeping Mountain, and every night, near the very top, a tiny golden light would appear. Softly, blink, gone, blink, gone. When Oliver asked his grandmother about it, she smiled. She told him a very old story. That blinking light was a magical mountain lantern, resting high above the clouds, meant to help tired travelers find their way home through the dark. Later that night, sitting in his cozy room, Oliver watched the light blink again. He thought about the lantern up there all alone. What if it needed help? So, very quietly, he packed a small bag. Oliver didn't have roaring dragons or shouting treasure hunters. He just had his small bag and his warm red scarf. The mountain was very big, and he was very small. But as he reached the first line of trees, his tiny adventure was finally beginning. Oliver packed only the simplest things: a sandwich, a little bottle of water, and his favorite warm red scarf. With his bag ready, he tiptoed out onto the moonlit forest path. The air smelled like cool pine trees. Soon, near a small wooden bridge, he met someone, a tiny fox with shimmering orange fur. The fox looked very worried. He had been out gathering moonberries for his family, and he had completely lost his way. A little further up the path, they found an old turtle standing in a forest of glowing blue flowers. Tiny bells clinked on his shell as he moved. The turtle looked exhausted and admitted he had forgotten which direction would take him home. Oliver smiled kindly. He invited them both to walk with him toward the mountain lantern, promising it would help them find their way. As they walked slowly up the steep path, Oliver broke off little pieces of his sandwich to share, making sure his new friends had enough to eat. The wind whispered gently through the trees, but suddenly everyone froze. High above them, the golden blinking light stopped. The mountain was entirely dark. The shadows grew long, and the trees looked very tall. But as Oliver looked at the fox and the turtle beside him, the darkness didn't feel quite so scary. Facing a long path is simply much easier when you are walking it with friends. They hurried carefully past the sleepy trees and tiny waterfalls until they finally reached the summit. There, they found a small, round lantern house. Sitting inside was a lantern keeper no bigger than a rabbit, wearing a drooping silver hat and looking deeply sad. The little keeper explained the problem with a sniffle. The lantern wasn't broken, the glass wasn't shattered. The lantern was just very, very sleepy, and it had completely run out of its special glow. If we look inside the lantern, we can see why it stopped. The center chamber is completely dark and empty. In this magical world, the lantern stays bright for a long time, but eventually it needs to be filled back up. It stays bright using something very special. Every 100 years, it needs to be filled with kindness to keep going. But because the keeper lives all by himself at the top of the mountain, the room was very lonely. He had no friends to share that kindness with. It is a lot like how we feel when we are very tired or lonely. Just like the empty lantern, we all run out of energy sometimes, and when we do, we need the warmth and comfort of other people to help us feel like ourselves again. Looking around the lonely, dark room, Oliver remembered something his grandmother always told him. Sometimes kindness shines brighter than magic. He realized they didn't need to find a new lantern. They already brought exactly what was missing. So they simply sat together. The fox shared funny stories about his moonberry hunts. The turtle gently rang his tiny bells to play a sweet song. And Oliver took his warm red scarf and wrapped it snugly around the shivering little keeper. As they spent time together, the lantern began to change. Those little glowing sparks started to move, pouring into the center of the lantern until it was full all the way to the top. Then the lantern burst back to life. A soft golden glow washed all the way down the mountain, lighting up the forest floor for everyone to see. It turns out, you don't need magic spells to fix a heavy problem. Sometimes a shared snack and warm scarf can bring back delight all on their own. As the sky slowly turned pale blue with the morning sun, the grateful lantern keeper handed Oliver a glowing star-shaped charm, a thank you for a brave adventurer. The fox hugged Oliver, the turtle bowed politely, and they all said their goodbyes. Oliver walked back down the mountain path as the birds began to sing. When he reached his village, Grandma was sitting outside, smiling softly as if she already knew exactly what had happened. That night, safely tucked in his fluffy blanket, Oliver looked out toward the sleeping mountain. The lantern was steadily blinking once again, and right beside his bed, his tiny star charm glowed softly in the dark. The mountain is very big, and the forest can be dark. But as Oliver learned, no one is ever truly lost as long as they carry a little kindness with them to guide the way.